Chapter 4. When Sophia woke, the shadows were long. She realized she'd missed the noon prayer, and the afternoon prayer had long been in. After taking a few minutes to wake up, get her bearings, and feel her head again, she made her ablution in the river, washing her hands awkwardly around her bandage, then her arms, face, and feet. Sophia prayed the noon and afternoon prayers together. She shortened them since she was traveling. After she finished praying, she decided to go ahead and start walking. Her things were drier now, although her jeans and backpack were still pretty damp. That was okay, though. She would have to wash them all when she got home anyway. She rolled the damp jeans up and wrapped them in the prayer rug. She put her toiletries into the outer pocket of the backpack, along with her mom's cell phone, laid the first aid kit, photo album, and medicines in the bottom of her pack where it was driest, and tucked her other t-shirt in last. She zipped the zippers and stood up, bringing the backpack up with her and settling it on her shoulders. When she turned to slip her feet into her wet pink shoes, she almost fell back down from shock. She was greeted by the sight of an old farmer and an equally old horse at the top of the slope. She'd been so absorbed in packing her bag, and the river was so loud that she hadn't heard them approach. "Afternoon, miss," he greeted her, lifting the woven straw hat he wore. "Name's Jacques Bodine. Sorry to give you such a start. We's on our way to Westport and stopped by for a drink."
Afternoon," Sophia answered, getting her voice back and looking around to make sure he was talking to her, even though she knew she was alone. "I'm Sophia Ahmed." She was as surprised by the man's looks as she was by his presence. He wore a long white beard and what appeared to be canvas or burlap overalls. His dirty white shirt had a rounded collar, and he had a pack of some kind on his back. He was holding his horse by a rope. Sophia had only seen horses up close a couple of times before. She was startled at how big it was. Its shoulders were almost level with the farmer's head.
"You okay? You look a bit befuddled. You need some help?"
Sophia looked down at her feet. Embarrassed, she slipped her feet into her flats and tugged her skirt down. Yes, please. I fell in the river and was washed downstream. I'm looking for the bike trail. My parents are probably going crazy by now."
"The bike trail?"
"Yes, the one that goes into Lawrence."
"Well, the Oregon goes through Lawrence. The Santa Fe goes south of there. I ain't never heard tell of no bike trail afore. But I'm on my way into Westport with these here furs. I can take you to Mattie Collins' place. You can figure it out from there."
Sophia hadn't noticed a pile of furs strapped to his horse's back. The man adjusted his business and spat on the ground. Sophia tried not to shudder. She began uncertainly, wary of the stranger who was obviously a bit off his rocker, but at the same time realizing she didn't have too many choices. Her upbringing told her not to go with a strange man, but he was old and probably out of shape. If it came down to it, she was sure she could outrun him. She finally decided to let him lead her to the lady's house. Then she could call her parents. Yeah, I'd appreciate that. I could use the phone from there. Thank you, Mr. Bodine." Jacques Bodine cast her a sidelong glance as though he found her very peculiar. He must think she was crazy, or that she had hit her head ever harder than she had. Sophia was wondering similar things about him. He sure seemed strange. As she joined Mr. Bodine and they emerged at the top of the rise, she began to wish she hadn't agreed to go with him. He smelled like Hisham's locker the time he left his gym socks in there over the weekend. And the furs smelled, too. A musky, dead things kind of smell. "How far is it?" she asked as they began to walk through the grass.
"Oh, about a quarter mile. This here's the Collins land." He indicated the general area they were walking on, and then looked at Sophia concerned. "Can you walk it?"
Oh, yeah, I can walk. I'm okay." They had entered a trail leading through the tall grass off to the right, but that was the only sign of civilization. She was really in the middle of nowhere, and there was no bike trail in sight. As far as she could see, in all directions except the way they'd come, were tiny rolling hills with tall grass glowing in the sun and waving in the breeze. They stayed on the path, and as they came to the top of a small ridge, Sophia could see the Collins place. Mr. Bodine chattered about his horse, Emily, and how old she was getting. Sophia didn't really listen or respond. She was thinking of other things, like how to get away if this guy wanted to add her skin to his pelt collection.